Top five, top five, top five.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of the #1 sports ranking show on YouTube. Welcome to the Countdown. And if there's one thing that we like to do on the Countdown, Brandon, is bring value to the viewer. So we're thinking, what better value could we bring than giving you the top 5 best bets for the 2023 NFL season?
Yeah, if we're going to bring you value, Rob, we might as well put some money in your bank account.
Exactly.
So with that said, we're going to definitely bring the energy and the vibes. You already know what time it is when it comes to that. So before I get too worked up, we might as well go ahead and hop right into this shit, Rob. But go ahead and make sure y'all tap that subscribe, smash the fuck out that like, because we're coming back every single week with some tough-ass content.
Absolutely. So getting into the countdown, we got to start off with a low-risk, high-reward kind of bet with the Jacksonville Jaguars getting the #1 seed, because these odds were too good to pass up. B, what were these odds, man?
Plus 1,000 for the Jags to be the #1 seed in the AFC.
Plus 1,000. So that means if you bet $10, you could win $100. Or if you bet $100, you could win $1,000 simply for the Jacksonville Jaguars getting the #1 seed in the AFC. They don't have to have the best record in the NFL. They don't even have to have necessarily the only best record in the AFC. They could have the tiebreaker. As long as they get that #1 seed, you cash out your bank account. And when you look around the AFC, of course, you're going to deal with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Bengals and the Bills, and there's a lot of tough competition. Yeah. But look at the competition those teams have in their divisions and the schedules that they have compared to Jacksonville that doesn't really have much competition at all with the Titans and the Texans and the Colts. Those are 6 wins right there possibly, and the schedule's not much tougher from there. So just seeing them take another step, it's an ascending team with an ascending quarterback, could be an MVP caliber season from Trevor Lawrence, Super Bowl winning coach with Doug Peterson, and a very talented team around them that could possibly find themselves at the #1 seed.
Yeah, when you're looking at AFC bets, you got to watch out for playoff teams, and we're not taking a playoff bet here, because the Jaguars play some playoff teams. It would be a struggle for them to beat the teams like the Chiefs and the top teams on the highest level. Right. But at the end of the day, when you look at the Jaguars' schedule, it's pretty pedestrian. They have a very soft, a very weak division. So when you're talking about a team that can wind up having the best record in the AFC or being the #1 seed, the Jaguars are very well positioned. And for plenty of the reasons, like Rob said, we're talking about an offensive head coach that has Super Bowl history. Right. We're talking about a very high-powered offense that has a lot of weapons at the receiver position, at the running back position, and a progressing offensive line as well. Have a lot of studs on the defensive side of the ball, but more than anything, they play in a very, very, very weak division, arguably the weakest division in football, which well positions a young, hungry Jaguars team to probably potentially top out at the top of the AFC this year.
Yeah, and we understand your objection to seeing the Jacksonville Jaguars taking the 1 seed. We had the same objection. 100%. What about the Chiefs? What about the Bengals? What about all these teams? You got to think about it. Cincinnati Bengals have never been the 1 seed in the AFC. Even the Chiefs have taken a lot of years off of being the 1 seed. We've seen the Ravens get the 1 seed. We've seen the Titans get the 1 seed. The opportunity is there for a team to sneak into the 1 seed, and the Jazz could definitely be that team. And with a plus 1,000 odds, like you said, can't pass that one up.
AFC South is garbage.
Right, so getting into #4, we got the San Francisco 49ers winning the NFC West, and that's one thing I like about this countdown, brand, is we have different types of bets for each one. We got Jags getting the 1 seed, a team winning the division, over, under, a lot of different things. So we're getting into a lot of stuff, but this is the only division one we have with the 49ers.
The 49ers are no doubt going to win the NFC West, and we're searching far and deep for the value in these bets, and that's how we found the 49ers, one of the most consistent teams in the NFL over the past season, one of the best playoff teams in the NFL over the past 5 seasons, over the past decade. And ever since Kyle Shanahan has taken over as head coach, he has found a way with numerous different quarterbacks to find ways to win games. Now they got Christian McCaffrey. They got the most versatile player in the NFL in Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk really showed out last year. George Kittle showed that he could take a step back and still be a prominent player on that offense. The 49ers have it all. And when you tap into that defense, the only question is really that secondary. Some players in that cornerback room. But at the end of the day, the way this unit has been comprised and the way that they have the experience and the success, they really could win this division quite easily. When we think about teams like the Rams that have taken a serious step back with the caliber of players on their team, the Seahawks played really well above expectations last year. They could possibly take a step back. So, I mean, you think about it, and the 49ers have a very good chance in a very weak NFC to easily win the NFC West and potentially be the #1 seed in the NFC overall.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors you got to consider when you're thinking about these kind of bets, especially a team winning the division, because there's 4 teams in that division. San Francisco is one of them. They are considered the favorite. That's why the odds are negative here. But then you look at the competition. I feel like this bet, just as much as it is about the 49ers, and you talked about how great San Francisco has been and looks to be again this year, it's as much about the rest of the competition too. When you talk about the Arizona Cardinals, a team that's probably the favorite or one of the favorites to land the #1 pick, so they're probably not going to be an issue. Then you got the Rams, a team decimated by injuries last year, holes all over the defense, holes all up in the offensive line, probably unlikely to see them compete with the San Francisco 49ers this year. And so really it just comes down to Seattle, and that's a team who, you know, barely snuck into the playoffs last year. It wasn't until week 18 that they got that final elusive playoff spot, and even then, you know, it took a lot of luck. They had some injury luck, they had some close wins that really came down to it. Even Geno Smith probably exceeded everyone's expectation last year, and nobody would be surprised to see him take a step back this year. So it's hard to see any team challenging San Francisco unless they get absolutely awful quarterback play, which wouldn't be that much different than last year. So just even having a consistent quality quarterback in place, that would be a big upgrade. A full season of Christian McCaffrey would be an upgrade. Another season of Brandon Ayuk developing would be an upgrade. That defense is still young and hungry, so they have a lot of pieces in place, a lot of reasons why that -165 isn't great odds in your favor, but it looks very likely to hit. And, you know, maybe you even sprinkle a little Jags winning the division along with it. Nice little parlay, get those positive odds, and a nice 2-for-1 right there.
Yeah, and the Seahawks defense, I'm not 100% sold on it. They got some solid players. Unfortunately, Jamal Adams went down early last year, but I think they still have some key holes in that defense.
Right, so another similar division bet we got here at number 3 with the Kansas City Chiefs winning over 4.5 division games. When you look at that number, seems like a pretty steep number, Brandon. That means they got to win 5 or 6 division games. But let me state one thing, and this is why we're very confident in this bet. The Kansas City Chiefs are 27-3 against the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. I'm going to repeat that one more time because this is a very important fact to know. Patrick Mahomes is 27-3 against the AFC West. He's 11-0 against Denver. Never lost to the Broncos.
Wow.
Only lost one time to the Raiders when they were taking victory laps in Kansas City afterward because of how shocking it was. And has only lost to the Chargers twice. One of them was back when Phillip Rivers was their starting quarterback during Mahomes' first season. So not one time has Patrick Mahomes went 4-2 or worse against the division. So he's been 5-0 at winning 5+ games against the AFC West. And when you look at that team coming off a Super Bowl win with Mahomes still in his prime, with Andy Reid, with Travis Kelce, all these guys, there's no reason to think they can't do it again.
I mean, yeah, I love this bet. Like you said, 27-3 speaks for itself. Patrick Mahomes has completely dominated this division. Andy Reid has completely dominated this division.
Right.
And yeah, this could be a very stout division this year. I mean, the Broncos could get a lot better. A lot of it depends on Russell Wilson. Obviously, they got a new head coach that came over from New Orleans. That can make that's a really good established coach, and is a very good offensive coach. But at the end of the day, the way that the Chiefs are comprised and the way that this team can continue to level up, despite them losing certain receivers, despite them losing some weapons, they continue to find ways to produce, and a lot of that is on Patrick Mahomes' shoulders. And the way that Patrick Mahomes has gone about this offseason, he's been very aggressive, he's been very bold, and he's been very upfront. And when there's a player to not be worried about, it's Patrick Mahomes. He's unquestioned the #1 player in the NFL, and I truly believe that he's going to continue to dominate this division every single year from here on out.
Yeah, and as great as Mahomes is, I think this one actually starts at the top. Like Andy Reid, right as soon as he got in the AFC West back in 2013, 5 years before Mahomes even became the starter, he was already, dominating division. He's always preached division games are the most important. And so when you're talking about the best offensive play caller in NFL history, knowing how important it is in those division games, pretty much saving his best plays for those division games, there's a reason why their record against the division is what it is, and Mahomes obviously is the best person to run that system, so it's just a recipe for success right there.
Unquestioned best head coach quarterback duo in the NFL.
Absolutely. So getting into number 2, though, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers making the playoffs with positive odds on this one, +140, Brandon.
Sheesh, Mike Tomlin is going to year 18, has still not had a losing season.
0.
Obviously, they barely missed the playoffs last year. They rallied around Kenny Pickett at the end of the year. I think he went 5-1 in his last 6 games as the starting quarterback, stopped turning the ball over, made some really wise plays. And the thing about the Steelers were they had a very limited playbook in the offense. It was a lot of just go balls to George Pickens, a lot of short passes to Deontay Johnson, a lot of short running plays for Najee Harris.
Right, basic shit.
Exactly, a lot of basic shit, and they really planned on expanding the offensive playbook this year to a point where you could see them actually put a lot more points on the board. Obviously, T.J. Watt was out a major part of last year, and that's when they really struggled. He came back. That's also part of the reason why they finished so strong. And at the end of the day, the Steelers found a way to go 9-8 with one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They had a bottom 10 roster, no question. For them to go 9-8, and this roster clearly has gotten better. They added Allen Robinson. They really surefired the offensive line, Isaac Seumalo. And they really progressed in a lot of ways on this team. It might not look like it on paper, but they made a lot of small additions, and they really killed the draft. When you think about them adding Joey Porter in the second round, Broderick Jones at the left tackle at 14, got Keanu Benton to help with the defensive line, and they just did a lot of smart things in this team. They didn't really have a lot of reaches in the draft, didn't have a lot of reaches in the free agency. You might not see a lot of big names come off besides Isaac Seumalo, but at the end of the day, this team got better. And for a team that's been consistently over 500, that went 9-8 last year, if they can find a way to sneak into 10 or 11 games, they'll easily make the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you kind of talked about it, but like Mike Tomlin doesn't have losing seasons. It just doesn't happen. We have full statistical evidence that supports that. So at the very least, you know Mike Tomlin's getting his 8 to 9 wins every single year, which is already you're in the playoff mix right there. And so when you have a team that's not that talented, like you said, a bottom 10 talented team, that might be where he ends up. This team's not like that. You know, they made some additions on the offensive line, in the receiving room, all these different things to improve. But you got to look internally. Like Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, the quarterback play they were getting last year was probably bottom 5, honestly. Yeah, so definitely. Anything similar to the 49ers, anything that could be average, just be mediocre, they're probably going to add 2 to 3 wins to last year's record. TJ Watt, you look at all the adversity that they faced last year with their quarterback situation, with the offensive line being one of the worst in the league. TJ Watt, their best player, missing pretty much half the season, and they still won 8-9 games. So you know this year they can definitely improve upon that. And with those pieces in place, I wouldn't be surprised to see them not just make the playoffs, but possibly even win the division if Kenny Pickett is anything above average.
100%. Last year was a very rare situation for the Steelers. New quarterback, new GM. They had a lot of new pieces moving around, and Mike Tomlin still found a way to lead that team to 9 wins. Obviously, Kenny Pickett is progressing into his second year in the NFL, and they did a good job building around him, especially on the offensive line, adding Allen Robinson, and the defense getting healthy and a little bit better as well.
Right. So the only bet that we have that is more likely to hit than the Steelers at number 1, we have the Atlanta Falcons under their 8.5 wins. And a lot of these bets are teams, you know, exceeding expectations or going to the playoffs or doing these different things. The unfortunate reality is unders are more likely to hit, so we have to have one under on this list. And when we scoured the entire NFL, all 32 teams, this under was the one that we like the most value, because Atlanta is a team expected to have 8.5 wins, which basically means they're expected to go 500. If they go under 500, you win money. This is a team with arguably the worst quarterback in the NFL. This is a team with arguably the worst coach, or at least a bottom 5 coach in the NFL. This is a team with arguably, if not the worst, receiving room in the NFL. This is a team with arguably the worst or a bottom 5 pass defense in the NFL. So there's a lot of components that matter in today's NFL that the Atlanta Falcons just simply don't have. And really the only reason for optimism is just the fact that they have a lot of young pieces that could develop, and that division is so bad. But that's what's getting people to be convinced that this team could win over. But the smart money is definitely on the under.
100%. And if you tuned in early to NFL free agency, you saw the Falcons making a bunch of moves. They went and got Jesse Bates, got David Onyemata on the defensive line. They added Caden Ellis, who had a really good year for New Orleans last year. They added a lot of pieces, but at the end of the day, they still have some major holes. And at the end of the day, I believe Bijan Robinson is going to be a very, very good running back. But they still had a 1,000-yard rusher on the team, and they still had Cordell Patterson on the team. So they used the 8th pick overall to invest in a position that they were already low-key stacked at. And at the end of the day, that wide receiver room is atrocious. And at the end of the day, that secondary is very atrocious. They obviously have A.J. Terrell. They have Jesse Bates. But outside of that, they have a lot of mediocre guys that aren't really going to get the job done. Luckily for the Falcons, they are in a very weak division. But at the same time, this team has to find a way to get to 9 wins for this bet not to hit. And the Falcons only won 7 games last year. They wound up winning their last 2 games of the year against 2 weak teams. I can't remember what the teams were. It might have been the Cardinals and some other garbage team. But at the end of the day, this team was close to only winning 5 games last year. And one of the worst divisions in football by far.
Right.
The NFC South, the AFC South, absolute garbage. And like you said, Rob, they have one of the worst head coach quarterback duos in the NFL. And I have no faith in Ritter. I think he can potentially become a bottom tier quarterback, but right now I think he's the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. And when you combine that with that receiving core, I mean, I don't see how that offense can really generate enough points to be competitive in a lot of these games. So the Falcons are a bottom tier team. They might not be one of the worst teams in the NFL, but they're definitely not good enough to get to 9 to 10 wins.
The Atlanta Falcons are going to have their work cut out for them to get those 9 wins, but we're trying to make it easy for you to cash out this year and hit those bets. So these are the top 5 best bets to make, and PSO is becoming the premier resource for preseason future bets. We have a good track record. You can check on our socials of winning money year in and year out. These are long-term investments. So at the end of the year, you can look back, make that money, and have a good time while doing it.
Yeah, go ahead and put your money on these bets right now. Sit back, put your arms behind your head, and let the season play out, because at the end of the day, we're going to make sure that these bets cash. So we're going to make sure we get some money in y'all's wallet, and we're going to make sure that this season really rides out well for you guys. Stay patient, stay cool, and we have a very good track record with these bets. So go ahead and rock with us.
Absolutely. See you next time.
Peace.